Alex Frank is here. We're going to talk some recruiting. TCU on fire lately on the trail. Landed a big 2024 prospect over the weekend. A couple 2025 kids. Don't glaze your eyes over when we talk 2025. We'll discuss why this is a big deal. That's all coming up next on Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, I'm Steven Simcox. Alex Frank is next to me. He's a friend of the show. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to follow Alex on Twitter, he has a new clever Twitter handle, @Alex_HornyToad. You guys get it. You understand what he's doing there. But he's a really sharp guy, and he has some thoughts on recruiting. And actually, Alex and I have been kind of texting back and forth for the past few weeks. And it hasn't really worked out schedule-wise to get together and actually talk about this. But we were both sort of like, we trust TCU's evaluations. Like it seems like they're getting some guys that they really like, that are high upside players, that by the time they get to campus, their ratings will probably be really solid. But they were missing out on some of the higher-ranked prospects that they were going after. And then right around the time we did that, Nate Palmer and Jeremy Payne, 2 4-star running backs committed. And then this week, Jakyle Baker, who is a 4-star wide receiver out of Brownsboro, East Texas kid. People out there like to call it Beast Texas. And this is a player that was on Alex's radar. He mentioned to me a while back, he was like, hey, this is a guy they really need to get. He's a priority. And so what is it you like about his game, Alex? And just, what was the importance that you kind of saw in landing him as a highly rated prospect in this class?
Yeah. So with Jakyle, I'm trying to pull up my tweet. I've tweeted a lot this week, but it was a pretty solid breakdown of his game. So I think with Jakyle, it comes down to his frame and stature. And so going along with that, he's 6'2", he's 170. With the help of Kaz and Meacham as well, and other receiver coaches, I think that he's going to blossom into 95-pound stud. He's very twitchy, has some elements of Jalen Reagor from that respect, not to scare anyone, but Jalen
was really good in college. The NFL career has not paid out, but he was really good at TCU.
Yeah. I'm speaking more about like his ceiling. Okay. I'm very excited about him because he does have that Quentin Johnston like frame, and once he fills out, he could be really special. What's different between him and Quentin is he actually excels in those 50-50 situations. So you kind of toss it up there, he'll go get it. But also, he's really, really fast. Like that dude can move. And if you were to use him in jet sweep situations, he would also excel as well. So I'm just very excited about the fit overall. It's a very solid fit.
It is a good fit. And it's interesting that you bring up Quentin, because I think one similarity between these two guys, Quentin out of high school, he was highly recruited, but his offer list wasn't insane. I mean, he was originally committed to Texas. He ends up flipping to TCU at the last minute. And Jakyle, kind of the same thing, is getting a lot of interest from a lot of good schools. Maybe not like the blue blood names that you would expect with a player of his caliber, but a really solid, really good 4A, football player. And I think, Alex, it's obvious, like this staff can get talented skill guys, right? And they have an emphasis on using him. So it's huge. And I think the momentum here is significant because you've seen the last few weeks. I mean, it does feel like there's some steam behind what they're doing, and we don't know the ins and outs of what they're selling,
For sure.
but it does feel like they're finally maybe gaining some footing. Do you feel better about the class overall than you did, over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I definitely felt a lot better. And so I actually put something out in response to one of the burners. We have some lovely burners in the community. I don't apologize. I don't remember the name, but I was responding and he was like, what's happening right now? And so I basically broke it down. It wound up going viral, but it was essentially saying that last year's triumphs essentially circled over the misses of the past few years between 2018 onward in terms of being able to actually establish and solidify our standing as a top 15 caliber program, because that's what we are on paper. And in reality, that hasn't necessarily been the cachet that has been assigned to us. And so now, based on the triumphs of the last season, and I think that some of that uncertainty and underperformances are starting to be erased, and you can really see and envision the upward trajectory of the program itself. Now, especially in the guys that they're able to land, guys that we should be able to land, guys that we should be targeting. We really shouldn't be targeting individuals that, in my opinion, there might be some gems. I might be overthinking it, but our old strategy of, going after, very under-recruited guys that may not even be ranked on whatever recruiting site you want to use, right? I really think that's below our pay grade with the caliber of the program that we've actually been harnessing since literally the beginning of the 21st century. So I like to see these recruiting battles. I like to see them go up toe-to-toe with, and we'll get to it, but Oklahoma and some of those other big schools that they're fully capable of beating out and actually showing their weight. So I love it.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. I mean, I think, part of the reason they land some of these guys that are a little more into the radar, at least this staff in particular, not speaking to Gary's staff because I think that was a different situation.
Sure.
But with this staff, they do these camps, these showcases, and I think they just end up kind of getting introduced and landing some kids that maybe might not be on people's radars, and they think like, okay, we get in early here and we see the ceiling and we go ahead and take the offer. But yeah, eventually, there's a middle ground, right? The people that say stars don't matter, that doesn't make any sense. You look at the recruiting rankings, like the teams that are winning titles are bringing in top 10, top 5 classes consistently. And, I would love for TCU to get there. I don't know if that's possible. We'll discuss more about that in a minute and kind of what the different factors are there. But they have landed some highly rated guys in the 2025 class. So over the weekend, and we'll talk about this young man first, Ty Hawkins, 4-star quarterback, the number 1 quarterback in the state of Texas for the 2025 class, according to On3, plays his high school ball down in San Antonio. And I know some of you, you hear 2025 and you immediately just check out, but bear with us. He's going into his junior season. And so is this an exact science? No. But if you turn on any highlight film, this dude's got an arm. And he looks like a special player, Alex. So this is significant. You have to hold on to him now, but it's big time to land a guy of this caliber early on in this recruiting process.
For sure. And like you said, now the onus is on the program to hold on to him, because there will be programs coming after and circling that man and offering him the world. But ultimately, this is a very good get. He has kind of been touted as the next big Texas quarterback, like similar to the way that recruiting sites posited Baker Mayfield, right, coming out of high school, kind of like brandished him with a lot of praise, and that, with college experience, that was definitely noteworthy. So I think this guy has all the tools in the world. He has a cannon of an arm, and anyone who does have that cannon is compared to Josh Allen when it comes to the draft. I wouldn't go that far though, but yeah, he's a special talent, and he also can run as well. So makes sense why Bryles would target someone like that.
It does, and he kind of fits of the dual threat, high arm talent types of guys that he's been after. One other thing about this that's intriguing to me, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, Alex. This might just be kind of dumb luck so far, but it does seem like, they end up with Haas Haney as really their first commit of the 2024 class. Before that, they had Marcos Davila, who ended up at Purdue with the offensive coordinator change. But it does seem like they have an emphasis on, okay, let's get a blue chip quarterback as like the first guy to sign on board. And then in this new world where all these kids know each other, hopefully in theory, it can be a bargaining chip as, hey, let's recruit other players. I don't know if they can continue to do that, but it seems like the staff is got an eye on at least trying to make that a priority and landing those types of players.
No, I don't think that's dumb at all. And I think that's right on the money, actually. College is unique in that, and I think you'd agree with this, that the value of a quarterback, I remember when we had the podcast, last time we did a podcast, it was like a month ago, and we were going over who are the best returning players in college football. And I was kind of saying that while most would say Caleb Williams, that's technically wrong because the quarterback position is so highly valued and overrated in the sense of college, because what's unique about college, as I'm saying, is you can get away with a lot with just having a stud take you all the way. Whereas, in the NFL, you need dudes at every position to ultimately harness that will to win and put it all together. But when you have a really good quarterback at the college level, you can do a lot, even if the players around him aren't necessarily the most talented. And, you saw that with USC last year. You really saw that with USC. And you kind of saw it in a sense with some other schools. I'm not going to name names, but I think it's absolutely an accurate assessment on your part that other players are going to want to play with, a guy, especially guys at skill positions that make it easy for them to get good looks when film comes out. So, the wide receiver position, running back, etc. All these players want to play with a really good quarterback because it makes them look better, more desirable, and enhances their name, image, and likeness. And maybe they can pursue the draft later on.
And so speaking of that, also they land Adrian Wilson, a 2025 wide receiver from Pflugerville, another four-star player, according to On3, according to 247 Sports, one of the top receivers in the state of Texas, one of the top in the nation. And they beat out Oklahoma for this young man, at least as of now. So it kind of plays back into what you're talking about, Alex. This is the type of guy they want, to be in the discussion for and ultimately land if they're going to take that next step to be more consistent in the program.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, that strategy of positing yourself with a really good quarterback and kind of using the in-state poll that they have. They have a ton of in-state poll. I think you'd agree with that. With their base and relationships with other high school coaches, that they're going to attract a lot of studs, and that seems to be the case. And that's not even to put into question or even address the caliber of coaches we have at the receiver position. It's very, very solid. Like whether it's Meacham or I always forget. I always confuse the slot receiver and the outside coach.
Yeah, Malcolm Kelly's the outside receiver coach.
Yes. They're both phenomenal at what they do. And, when you go to running back, Anthony People-Jones has put so many guys in the league. So really, it's a combination of attracting the right players to surround themselves with really solid talent, which I think you were getting at earlier, right? And then having the staff around them and the recruiting ability to bring it home, sell it, and make them stay. And what I would say, and explain, I don't want to ramble too long, but I would say that, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, I think that the part of the next step is expanding your foothold, because we know it's really strong in Texas and they go after a lot of Texas guys. But as I'm looking at their offer sheet, it's pretty much all Texas. I would like to see some aggressive recruiting in California, in Florida. Those states are very crucial. California especially, there is a market for it. I know USC fans might digress, but they do not have a monopoly on recruits coming out of the state. And so what happens is a lot of those Cali recruits go to UT. We should be in those fights as the next step, for sure. We need some more bodies that can actually matriculate down to California and make a personable pitch, which has been a hallmark of our program, but be able to do it in different key pipeline states.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the national recruiting, goal is still there in a big way. And we'll talk more big picture in a moment. Does TCU have the resources to keep this going? We'll break that down next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. I do want to mention FanDuel quickly. MLB in full swing right now. Rangers dropped 2 out of 3 of the Yankees over the weekend. That Rangers bullpen that had kind of righted the ship. Not the best effort. Blew a game today on Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday night. And then Saturday, first and second, nobody out in the 8th and the 9th. And Bruce Bochy, famous NL manager, didn't lay down a single bunt. I was kind of confused in that in a 1-0 game. But if you want to bet on these things, if you want to bet on MLB games, you can do that at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can also use their easy, safe, secure, and easy to navigate app. They are the official betting partner of the NBA, Major League Baseball. NFL's coming soon enough. There's over-under win totals for college football, 7.5 for the Frogs. That seems like easy money to me. Check it out on FanDuel. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also, they have an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Even my dad was able to download this app and navigate it. My father knows nothing about smartphones, nothing about apps. He's very bad at it. He once got scammed by some terrible people that kind of thrifted him out of some money. That's another story. He got things back, but he was even able to use this FanDuel app in a safe and secure way. So FanDuel, they're a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. We are happy to have them with us. All right, we're rolling along here with Alex Frank on Locked On Horned Frogs. So we've been talking recruiting, and our next segment is an intriguing one. So we'll discuss kind of, okay, what does TCU have to do to keep this up? And NIL is obviously a huge talking point around the nation. And it's one of those funny things because we know there's people spending a lot of money in the SEC. We know Miami has a big base. But it's still like there's still vague numbers out there. We don't always know like what everybody's getting. But Alex, I know you have had some concerns about can TCU keep up, or do they have the right people pumping in cash? Because for years it was like all the big money donors We need to get facilities. We need to, pay for coaches. And now it's okay. We also need you to do this. What's your, I guess, concern level for TCU as they try to navigate this NIL space and compete with, the biggest and baddest schools in the country and all the resources they have?
I'm really not that concerned in the traditional sense, meaning that the donors they have access to have a lot of resources to allocate. What I'm most concerned about is the traditional donors that already give to the university and some of our listeners might still not be on the same page, but ultimately about paying players, but ultimately this is the way of the world now. The market has changed. And, for anyone who has seen air, just from a business perspective, it kind of calls into question the actual value that the stakeholders have versus the market dictating it by the athlete. And so that entire movie really led to this in the sense that Michael Jordan's deal as an athlete, getting a piece, a royalty, all of that led to the precedent today that is NIL. Because at the time that was historic. No firm really does that. But now it's commonplace. And so the question is, what are we going to do? And they have a ton of resources to choose from. Just because we're small doesn't mean we don't have a lot of money. And whether that comes from our undergrad population, which tends to be very upper class, or the donor base itself, there's a lot of money to be spent. And the reality is that my main concern, which I was kind of getting away from, is that people are still reluctant to reallocate those funds that may be going into the sauna or the news locker rooms that really in hindsight don't matter. The market isn't going to reward that anymore. You're kind of on train with residual returns at this point. So you really need to reallocate that to the players, because the players are the ones that are generating value, and it's just the way of the world. And so my main concern is making sure that the collective itself is communicating that effectively to the donors, and the donors themselves are reciprocating from that aspect, because if they're not, we will have problems. If they do, we should be really up there, a lot better than a lot of people want to give us credit for. I know as fans, there's this, underdog mentality. I think it's kind of funny. We're the little small school from Fort Worth. Guys, like, it's starting to get old once you get on the national championship stage. You're not really the underdog anymore, or the underfrog. So really, we have a lot of resources to allocate. It's just reallocating them to the proper place. That's my main concern.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my big question is, and we've discussed this off air too, but they obviously can land good skill players, right? Like Coach Dykes has shown an ability to get receivers, running backs. They're super talented. I think they're showing some strides in landing big-time quarterbacks. With what Texas is doing, they have a war chest they're just allocating towards offensive linemen.
Sure, yeah.
And, of course, across the country, you look at the big dogs, like big-time dominant defensive linemen are there. And I think the staff did a good job last season. They landed Dominic Williams at the last minute. They went and got Marcus Steele and Avion Carter. And this past class, Travis Jackson, I think, is a player that's going to end up being really, really good. But I have questions about what can they do in the trenches, Alex. And I don't know how much that can be kind of made up in the portal. But something that Brian Smith talked to me about, who's our new recruiting expert here at the network, he was like offense, you can scheme up a lot of things. Now, I don't really totally agree that you can scheme up offensive line, but I get his point. Yeah. There's ways to sort of mitigate and mask some of your deficiencies. Defense is really about dudes. Like, it's just about having dudes.
For sure.
And you can disguise coverages and bring different exotic blitzes and be deceptive, but it still comes down to, can my guy beat your guy? And so I don't know how they make that shift happen. But I think if we're talking about being on the national stage on a regular basis, that's got to be the big push from this coaching staff moving forward.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, based on the recruits they're targeting, at least, I think you would agree that a lot of them are coming in the trenches, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Brian's an interesting voice. I've expressed to you off camera that I like Brian. I like the new, fresh perspective that he provides. So if you're listening, Brian, thank you. But I think he does have a point. I think that for some of these positions that may not be as skill-oriented, that some of this you can fill through the portal. Now, reliability is going to be an issue. The grading system for the portal, jury's not out on that yet. It's very new. We don't really know how reliable these grades are yet. So the jury's really still out on whether you can actually fill the void almost majority to entirely through the portal. But with concern of, using that war chest, I think that you do need to spend some of it on the offensive line. And I think that's what you're getting at, correct?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes. I mean, essentially, and it's all still kind of gray, like what's going where. But yeah. I would just say, as far as spending NIL money, I want some hog mollies. Like, I want those guys to get paid and taken care of. Yeah. I think those are the players you're going to have to move the needle with more with that part of it.
No, for sure. And so. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think when I'm looking at the recruiting, and I'm looking at that right now, my main concern, going along with your concern, is a lot of these defensive linemen, they're kind of striking out with. But the offensive linemen, they're having, good success, good fortune with. Yeah, for sure. So, I think you would agree that this upcoming season is going to dictate to a large degree what the upward trajectory looks like for the program. If we go 7-5, which, a lot of people don't really, and I love the Frogs as much as the next guy. The schedule worries me. I don't think 7-5 is going to happen, but 8-4 could happen. It really could, the way it breaks. And so a lot of this momentum is going to be dictated on, how we perform this year. So, because you have to remember, and I said this to you like a day ago, that most of the guys that led to the consummation of a top 20 recruiting class, which was unheard of just from a composite standpoint until last year, were landed, I think you would agree, as a byproduct of the fruits of last year. Right. And we saw most of those recruits go down late October, mid-November, and especially the transfer portal. We saw that needle moved heavily in December. I know, because I was graduating, and the night before we just landed 7 guys. I was like, what is going on? But it'll be interesting. But I think some of this uncertainty is going to be answered just through play on the field.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll take one more break, and then we'll wrap things up with some basketball discussion. So next to Locked On Horned Frogs. All right, final thing for Alex. So a couple guys on this TCU roster last year are going to get chances in the NBA. Mike Miles was not drafted on draft night, but did get a two-way contract with the Dallas Mavericks, so he'll be close to home. He'll get a chance to, put on for DFW again. And then Damien got an Exhibit 10 contract with the Lakers, which essentially means he'll get a chance in Summer League. And then if he impresses in Summer League, whether it's with the Lakers or somebody else, he could possibly turn that into a G League deal or into a two-way contract as well. So we'll focus on Mike mainly. Congratulations to both those guys, first off. But, Alex, I know Mike Miles is a player that you've admired for a long time, was obviously part of the huge turnaround. What do you think his ability is and kind of his projection could be in the NBA? Do you believe he's a player that could make and land on an NBA roster for years to come?
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy at UCLA a few nights ago because we were going over the draft and Amari Bailey and other players that UCLA drafted, and we were saying that if I was like, hey, do you want to make a side wager? If Mike doesn't get picked in the second round, I guarantee you that the Mavs are going to pick him up not an hour after the draft. Sure enough, that's what happens. And I think it's a great fit. Cuban obviously is very supportive with homegrown talent, so to speak. Right. And, Irving might be someone, that might be interesting to learn from. Not sure.
Not on a lot of topics, but from a basketball perspective, yes.
From a basketball perspective, for sure. So I'm very excited from him. From a skill perspective, thank you. From a skill perspective, what can you say? A lot of people slept on him just because of his size. Size bias is real in the NBA, and even though he's 6'1", he's a stud. He's an agile perimeter defender, a lot more than a lot of the NBA scouts wanted to give him credit for. And he's a great playmaker, especially in transition situations or ISO as well. And he can also, spot up from three. We saw that plenty of times during the tournament, whether it be against Arizona or Arizona State or Gonzaga. Gonzaga, he basically owned the first 20, 25 minutes of that of play. Like, he was on fire. They could not stop him. And he's also crazy athletic, which I think is going to help him a lot. Great leaping ability, and he's really fast. And he's, for lack of better words, built like a truck stick, meaning he's built like a linebacker, so to speak. And that frame is going to help him a lot in the NBA.
He's Alex Frank. Again, that's at Alex_HornyToad on Twitter. Alex, thank you for joining us today, man. Always a good time. Appreciate your perspective all the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. And if you want to tune in tomorrow's Locked On Horned Frogs, speaking of recruiting, there's rumors flying around. I don't know how much validity is to this, but Chase Burns, Tennessee pitcher, who touches like 100 on the radar gun. There's murmurs that he could be linked to TCU, which will be really fun if that happens. So we'll discuss that and a lot more. That'll be in tomorrow's edition of Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.